Hi, how are you? Now, as we go deeper and deeper into the subject of social welfare, what's important to emphasize, for me at least, when I read the Beveridge report for the very first time, because I was really curious to find out where does the whole idea of social welfare come from? What is it based on? What is it predicated on? What is it premised on? I was very surprised to realize when I read about social welfare for the first time that the original capstone, the Beveridge report, did not contain a single sentence, not a single reference, not even in paragraph, sentence, or word form about the whole idea of taxing the rich in order to give money to the poor. And this was very curious to me, because I've always believed that the whole idea of the welfare system is designed in a very loop-sided way, whereby you tax the rich in order to make possible the whole idea of an egalitarian society that is able to deliver better healthcare, free education, that allows basically people who didn't bother to take their lives seriously enough to lay the foundation, and now they're riding on the back of people who have to work in order to make sure they don't fall beneath the cracks. No, that idea is completely untrue, okay? The fact of the matter is, when I read the Beveridge report for the very first time, I noticed that it was a very simplistic idea, which really only framed the question of why we should have this whole idea of the welfare state in one sentence. That is to say, going back to my original post, what is the definition that defines the relationship between citizen and state, right? That's the whole idea, basically, right? And what are the elements that make up a good relationship? And the Beveridge report listed 5 aspects of what they consider to be good. And even today, when you read it, it sounds like something that was basically hatched in some kindergarten playground, because it's not written in very complicated language. And the word good appears again and again. It's a reoccurring theme. And I started to talk to many people about this, because I was curious to understand why were the thoughts structured in that way. And I think the one important lesson I learned was that whenever you read something like the Beveridge report, which was basically conceptualized in 1943, you can't really do so by having a presentist attitude. Now, a presentist attitude is an attitude whereby we take the mind of today and we try to understand what happened somewhere in the past. Now, that's not possible. So what we need to do is ask ourselves, what was happening in 1943? Now, 1943 basically was an inter-war year, and Europe was basically fighting with Adolf Hitler, and 43 was the turning point, because 43 basically was roughly the point when the Nazis were getting kicked out from Russia. They had lost the Battle of Stalingrad, and Montgomery had also kicked out Rommel from Egypt, and he was doing a pretty good job in Alamein. So the British and the European and the Allies were on a roll, and there was this mood of euphoria among the general public that evil had finally been pushed away, and humanity could basically get on with the business of carving a better world. And that sort of explains why, when you read the Beveridge report, it is basically couched in very simplistic fairy tale language, where the word good is used, right? And where it's not uncommon for people to ask, can the government produce good? And the reason why good has a currency during that period of time was basically because there was so much bad that was going on around the world. I mean, you had people like Hitler, Mussolini, and Tojo that was basically running all around the world and creating all sorts of havoc. So I think it's important to understand the contextual background of this whole discussion. But more importantly, what this whole idea actually illustrates is that our idea of making sense of the whole idea of minimum wage is basically an acquired taste, where we we don't think these days in terms of good anymore. Rather, we think in terms of yield, percentile results, or whether these goals and these measurements can be tangible. We have basically renounced the whole idea that the question of minimum wage has anything to do with the idea of morality. And what must be emphasized is that this is an acquired taste. It is an acquired taste that came about only in the last 20, 15 or 10 years, when the whole idea of modern day economics, Keynesian economics as we know it, began to creep into this whole idea of defining organizational and personal success. So my point is to basically bring back the whole question of good, the whole question of what constitutes good. Because when you look at the whole question of how the proponents of the Beveridge report structured their hypothesis, you will come to only one conclusion, that they did not structure it as an economic question, and it was structured as a moral question. And my point is to emphasize why we need to go back and reclaim that idea of asking ourselves whether the whole idea of minimum wage is perhaps something that we should rightly do, right? Even though economically it may not make a lot of sense. And I think this is something that we need to go back and consider.